the protagonist in all 4 of my books is a woman trial lawyer. Some are natural blondes, unlike me. And they are, you know, they tend to share some characteristics, at least superficially. One's a single mother, something I know a lot about. One is in a successful relationship. One can't seem to get a date. I have had all those experiences actually in the last year. But I really believe that you have to write something from your own experience, and I think your heart comes into it then. And all the other stuff that is peripheral that somehow gives the novel some texture and isn't, you don't put there by contrivance, but just comes with it. So I think there's a similarity. There's certainly a similarity in the voice. I sort of feel like if you like the stuff I write, and you'll like the first book as much as the 4th, and that they're books written by me is the series. It's hard because I think some people like series characters, but
it really is a series character in the same way as I said that Dick Francis is often mistakenly thought not to be writing a mystery series,
yes.
But in fact, if you read them, they really are a series. It's the same kind of character.
That's right.
In the same kind of situation. What makes it interesting is the changes in setting and in subject matter, the different kinds of research, the neat stuff you can learn. Your books, to me, are a series in the sense that there's the same voice and the same atmosphere. You have blonde Italian-American women attorneys in Philadelphia, but on the other hand, you each time have a fresh cast of characters, a fresh setting, and I think it makes it more interesting to read the books, whether you read them in sequence or not. But it also worked well for what we were discussing earlier, which is that you had 2 paperback originals, now you have 2 hardcovers, so what? Mm-hmm. You know, because the books aren't following along in a line. I think it's much more awkward for an author who is writing a continuing character with a continuing name to start out in paperback and then move on to hardcover.
I think you're right about that.
And so, you know, it's worked well for you.
It's also something that is governed almost entirely, I think, by the genre. If you are writing a thriller, a legal thriller like I'm writing, you have a person who, at some point, and it's a normal person, it's not a PI or a cop or some type of authority figure, who is in mortal peril. And that person, you can't write a thriller and have the same person in mortal peril every year, because at some point the person has a nervous breakdown,
right. or gets killed or whatever.
Or gets killed, and also you've distanced. There's no credibility at that point. I mean, I really like to write authentic, entertaining stuff, and I don't want to lose a reader by who will sit back and say, it's sort of I think of it a little bit as the Jessica Fletcher syndrome. Another body.
Right.
I would never move to Cabot Cove. I mean, Scottsdale in a minute, but Cabot Cove never. You go. This, at some point, why is she the only person finding the bodies? As much as I like that show, there's something that will distance a reader about that, and that's why I don't do it.
Well, certainly pace is one of the characteristics of your books. There's lots of action. There's lots of humor in them, too, which is one reason I enjoy them. I loved in Running for the Law, your 3rd book, I love Rita.
Yes.
And I love the poker game, and I love, you know, the sort of sense of humor that she maintains about it.
Well, I really think that the books, the characters have to be believable, and I think the more people I meet, the more I realize that it is true, that people are very witty. They say clever things. We make each other laugh. And so the books aren't funny, but then again, if you're making a realistic character, God, I hope to God they can laugh at something. They wouldn't be much fun to know, much less spend 400 pages with.
Well, the humor comes in the dialogue. You're right. It's not a situation comedy kind of a thing. There are comic mysteries, but that's not right. You know, this isn't a small town with aliens or
exactly.
some of the stuff. But I do like the fact that while the mortal peril scenario is unfolding, there is still humor among the characters and in their interactions, and a very strong sense of family loyalty in your books, I think, which again may be the Italian-American bit.
That's so Italian.
Yeah, right.
You're right to point that. That's interesting.
But that does come across. Can you tell us a little bit about the plots there are 4 books. There's Everywhere That Mary Went, Final Appeal, Running from the Law,
and the new one.
And the new one, which is Legal Tender, right here.
Yeah, and Legal Tender it's interesting to say loyalty, because I think when I start a book, I think what kind of character is interesting. And Benny Rosato, who is the heroine in Legal Tender, is nothing if not loyal. She is a little rough around the edges. She practices law in Philly, and she sues the police for misconduct and excessive force. And unfortunately, in Philadelphia, we've actually been rocked by scandals about that, although the book was written before that happened, interestingly. But, so she's tough. She's also big and tall, which is something that I'm not at all, and always wanted to be. Look at my heels. Yeah. But she's really, so she's a tough character. She was raised, she takes care of a sick mother, and she was raised without a father, so she has a kind of her persona has some rough edges to it. Mm-hmm. But she connects with people, and she helps people, and she cares about them. And in what happens in Legal Tender is that she builds up a law firm with her lover, and he dumps her for a younger woman who also works at the firm, and she is reeling from it. And the next thing that happens is that he turns up dead. It turns out that the boyfriend has left Benny tons of money in his will, and she has motive aplenty to kill him. Not only that she's scorned and not happy about it. This is a vocal woman. She's not suffering silently. She's complaining.
A woman wrong and
exactly.
telling us all. Yes.
She is a lawyer scorned, and it's not a pretty sight. But the police suspect her, and of course, if I wanted to think about what would happen to somebody who's a murder suspect in a town where her living is made prosecuting the police. And I have a lot of friends now who are cops, and they really help me a lot with Legal Tender and what would happen to a person in that situation. I think it's entirely realistic, and what happens is she is about to be indicted for murder, so goes on the lam to prove her innocence. And she's on the run. She is a rower, which is something else I did in college. That was in the days when you could be really short and row. But it has given her a real fortitude. She just doesn't give up. And she's also physically strong. And as you say, there's a lot of action in this book. She's got to do a lot of things. She's got to jump and crawl and climb and get away and chase. And she can do it all. And she does. I like her. She's a lot of fun.
And you're right that it would be very hard to replicate that in another book about that particular character, because how could her life, reach a peak like that or a low like that ever again? What about in Running for the Law? In Running for the Law, you have a judge, which I think is terribly interesting, who is the person who's a judge in Jeopardy book. It's a new category.
Right, who cares is what happens.
You don't see judges very often. So what you've done is taken an authority figure, a judge who's supposed to be, in the legal sense at least, God, and taken him off the bench and dumped him into a mess.
That's
and
right.
then given someone who has no particular reason to love him the case of solving this problem for him.
It's true. Running from the Law it was a story that sort of was sparked by me reading a lot of cases about how there's a lot of sexual harassment cases against judges. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, that's not entirely unlikely. I mean, you could understand why that happens. And as much as I respect the bench, I thought, wouldn't that be interesting? And I was working for a judge at the time who was a woman judge. But I thought, boy, if this were a gorgeous single man, I would have a very major crush. And so I wanted to use that. And in Running from the Law, what happens is a woman, Rita Moroni, who is a poker player, defends a judge who is accused of sexual harassment. And then when the woman who's accusing the judge ends up dead, the judge is accused of the murder. And so Rita Moroni, poker player extraordinaire, finds herself defending a judge on a murder charge. And it's kind of interesting because I like the idea, anyone who is at all cognizant these days of the law and the criminal justice system knows that there is unfortunately a fair amount of gamesmanship in trial law. And I actually like that inside stuff, and that's what I put in Running, that Rita Moroni is a poker player. She understands risk, she likes risk, she takes risk well. She's a superb poker player, so when she's in front of a jury, Running opens up with her, somewhat tastelessly. The trial's been adjourned because someone's mother has died, but the jury wasn't told whose mother died. Rita comes into court after the recess dressed in black. She's got her hair black and a ribbon. She's looking very tired and depressed, like someone who's lost their mother. It's extraordinary stunt. I would never do it in a million years. I will tell you, I've seen worse. But that's the kind of thing that character would do, and I sort of wanted to explore that kind of lawyer and that kind of woman as well.
Risk and bluff.
Risk and bluff, exactly.